Good morning and welcome to Community Conversations. I'm Vicki Green. Today's show topic made me think. Do I take my hearing for granted? Do you ever think about the noises you hear every day and what it would be like if you couldn't hear anything? Well, according to the National Institutes of Health, NIH, 1 in 6 people in this country, that's 48 million Americans, suffer from some degree of hearing loss. And many people between the ages of 20 and 69 who could benefit from wearing a hearing aid don't get them. Less than 16%, according to the data I saw, have ever used them. Worldwide, it's even more staggering. According to the World Health Organization, about 500 million people across the world suffer from disabling hearing loss. Not just hearing loss, disabling hearing loss. 34 million are kids. And by the year 2050, which sounds far away, only 30 years, the worldwide number is expected to double to almost 1 billion people with disabling hearing loss. So May is Better Hearing and Speech Month, and the theme is communication across the lifespan. So to help raise awareness about hearing loss, we have in studio 2 special people today. We have a local licensed hearing instrument specialist from Beltone in Auburn, Ken Karras, and Jane, who's from Brookfield, who's been living with hearing loss for about 4 years. Good morning, Ken. Good morning, Jane.
Good morning.
All right. So, Ken, we're going to try and answer many questions today for people. How common is hearing loss? What age is most common? What are the causes? Should we be worried about our kids wearing their earbuds up with the volume super high, going to a loud concert, wearing headphones for work, working in construction, all of these things? Ken, can you explain how and why you got into the business? I understand from talking to you before the show, it was a family business in Quincy.
My father was involved before I was in it, and then while I was in school, I started working with him, and after school, we went in business together.
Okay, and so how many years had he been doing it?
He'd been doing it for about 15 or 20 when I got involved.
So how long have you been doing it?
37.
So nearly 40 years you've been dealing with this.
Yes.
So just to be clear, what a hearing instrument specialist is, there are ENTs, which are ear, nose, and throat doctors, right? There are audiologists, clinicians, and then there are licensed hearing instrument specialists who are certified, which is what you are, certified by the National Board for Certification in Hearing Instrument Sciences. That's a big word. So to be clear, you're not a doctor. However, you provide hearing tests and clinicians refer patients to you for hearing aids. What are some of the signs of hearing loss?
For the most part, the television would be louder, the radio would be louder. You're asking people to repeat. One of the big ones is that you start to lose your ability to hear well in noisy situations.
Like in a restaurant?
Restaurant, small groups, family gatherings. And again, it's seen by others, but not always brought to the attention of the person with the hearing loss.
Interesting. What are the most common things you hear from people when they come in to talk about hearing aids?
It's funny, for the most part, we don't hear from the person with the hearing loss as much as we hear from the people that they're with.
They get dragged in there?
Well, hearing loss comes on very slowly. So if you were to lose the amount of hearing that most of my people have overnight, you would go to the emergency room. But over a period of 10, 15 years at 5% a year, it just becomes the new norm every year as you lose more hearing loss. And it goes undetected for long periods of time.
Or it's detected and people really just don't, either the people in the family don't want to say anything, or they're just saying, oh, it's not a big deal. It's only 1 year and I'm only 70.
What's happening more often, too, is when I started in business 37 years ago, family was in close proximity. Now families spread around the country and around the world. People have children in other states. So the people who would pick up on the signs no longer live near them.
No, that's a good point.
And so and as we were talking earlier, television louder. Now people don't watch television together. They have televisions, 2 separate rooms. So is that an indicator? It's becoming less, unfortunately.
And how about construction? Because I never even thought of that until we talked earlier about people. I mean, you see the guys with the blasters and the pavement blasters wearing those headphones. Do those work?
They work to a certain extent, but those are the people wearing them. You'll find a lot of the people I see that are in the trades are working in small home improvement type construction, plumbing. Are they going to wear them? No.
Is there loud noise with plumbing?
Of course, you're metal on metal.
true.
You're sawing through metal. That's high frequency, and it's going to disturb your high frequencies.
Interesting. Do you find people are reticent because they find maybe there's a stigma to wearing hearing aids? Are they reticent to come in? Because like you just said, usually it's somebody else that brings them in.
A lot of it is just denial. And again, every year as you get worse, it becomes the new norm. So when they do come in, a lot of times they don't realize it. And when we bring it to their attention, they're somewhat surprised. And when we alleviate the problem, they're even more surprised.
Mm. And I'm sure that we're going to talk about the technology changes, because I'm flabbergasted when I saw Jane, my guest. So Jane, you're from Brookfield. How old were you when you realized or how long ago did you realize you may have a hearing problem? And did you realize it?
I probably picked up on it about 4 years ago. I think that it was a lot longer than that, but I really didn't want to believe. And as Ken said, it gets to be the new norm. So it didn't really feel to me like it was much of an issue.
And you're in your 50s, so we're not
Yes.
talking, I just want to be clear. You're right. I'm counting that as young, since I am too. So what did you start to notice things, or was it your family who pointed it out to you?
It was a little bit of both, but mainly my family. When my daughter would come home from school, the TV would be so loud she'd come in through the garage and she could hear the TV. And I noticed that when I was out at any kind of functions, that when people were talking to me, I'd say, what? More than once, I'd get very frustrated because I couldn't hear what they were saying. And I usually would ask them to repeat, and then it would get to the point where if I still didn't hear it, I just let it go. And that's when I started to realize, a lot of people around me were saying that I was having an issue. I didn't really want to believe it because I thought, I'm in my 50s. I'm too young to have an issue with hearing.
And I bet you hear that a lot, Ken. I'm sure that's something. What's the average age that you see for hearing aid walk-ins or referrals?
In my office, for the most part, 75 is average. We're starting to see younger people. And because the technology has risen to where it is, people have more interest in it. Younger people who enjoy technology are looking things up where they wouldn't before.
Oh, you mean if they can't hear, they're actually going online and looking at what their
Yeah,
choices
I go online
are?
for everything.
Well, that's true. That's true. And it can be a good thing and a bad thing, like we
Yes.
talked about. I mean, they determine hearing loss, right? There's like several levels depending on what research I looked at. But there's basically 3 levels, and it's divided by a decibel range, which is the sound level. So what would be someone who's starting to have hearing loss if they went to a doctor, the decibel level, where they would, to the point where they would need maybe a hearing aid? When you do you do tests in your
Yes.
office, right?
Yes, I do.
What does the test look like? Let's go back to that. What does a test look like? When we were in school, we were talking about this. When I was in school, and I don't know how many schools do it anymore, they used to put you in a room and then they'd play a tone and say, raise your hand every time you hear the tone. And then the tone would fade and fade. But I was like, they're not going to fool me, and I'm going to raise my hand. How do you test now?
It's pretty extensive. When you walk into my office, first we do video otoscopy, where we look in your ear, and you can see it on the monitor. And we clear up right away whether it's just wax causing the problem. Then after that, we have a booth where we test them, and we do ear testing, bone testing.
What do you mean bone testing? Because I read about that. Bone
That's
testing?
when we oscillate the mastoid.
Which is?
The bone behind your ear,
Okay, let me feel. Okay, I see what you mean.
and that will go directly to the cochlea rather than using the outer and middle ear.
So the cochlea is in the inner ear. So there's outer, middle, inner, and then in the inner, there's several parts, right?
Yes.
Okay, because we were talking about that. You hear about cochlear implants. What's the difference between a cochlear implant and a hearing aid? Because when I hear implant, it kind of scares me.
A hearing aid is more of an aid. It's something that is helping you with your hearing loss to get through it. For the most part, I don't deal with cochlear implants, but cochlear implants are for people that really would not benefit as much from hearing aids any longer. So they have to go to the next step.
And that's a surgical process, but then you were telling me but there's a magnetic piece you can take on and off?
Yep, this is the actual, it looks almost like a hearing aid, but larger, and it's now magnetically attached to your head, which sends the signal to the cochlear implant.
Okay. According to the NIH and other research that I called through, there are the several stages of hearing loss, but mild, severe, and profound. But I think people don't realize that when they use the term deaf, it doesn't necessarily mean total loss of hearing. Like you can't hear anything, because you can sometimes hear faint noises if you're legally deaf. Just like if you're legally blind, sometimes you can see shadows. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Is that a misconception?
Yes, I mean, again, I deal with the hard of hearing, which is basically hearing aids are the equivalent of needing glasses. You know, it's commonplace. It's happening every day. And as I said earlier, we lose it to 4-5% a year. Well, every year I go to get my eyes checked. If I lose 5%, I'm getting a new pair of glasses. Most of my people don't come in for their first test until they have a 40, 50 decibel hearing loss.
Like till they're 70 years old, they don't come in.
Yeah,
So nobody goes for annual hearing tests.
they should be.
Can you go to your primary care for that? Or do they usually refer
They'll
you?
refer you out, but everybody should have a baseline. You know, that way you have something to compare to as the years go on.
Now, you told me, we were talking before the show about the cochlear implants, that you had an interesting story about that when you were working in Quincy,
Yes, I had, I won't use his name, but I had one of the first people with a cochlear implant
in the country.
in the country, and I believe it was at the Mass Eye and Ear. And
Boston.
he actually toured with the physicians that did it around the country at
To
the
explain
time,
what it was?
To explain what it was. And he also, because he had many of years with hearing, he was able to verbalize it. Where
Yeah.
a lot of the people getting cochlear implants,
You can hear their voice change.
yes.
So that brings me to Jane, because when Jane came in, we hadn't met before, so I didn't know. First of all, just so I can paint the picture, because we are in radio and people can't see you, your hair, you have shoulder length hair, you can't even see it. Because it was only a couple years ago, right, that you diagnosed, your speech is fine,
Yes.
as people can hear.
Yes.
So were you concerned about that when you got them? Like, are they going to be big? Are they going to be uncomfortable? What was your big concern about hearing it?
I think the big concern was, what are they going to look like on me? You know, and you think about it and you say, I was too young. I didn't want to do this. And I really did try to kind of fight it a little bit. But then once I had them, what an improvement. It was incredible. You can't see them. Just like you said, you can't see them.
I can, right now looking at you, I can't see them. And even when you pulled your hair back, you have eyeglasses and the wire is so tiny. It's not these big tan things that go in your lobe anymore.
Right,
that my
right.
grandfather used to have and fought us constantly. Oh, these things, you would hear him beep because he would turn up the volume so high and then he'd throw them out of his ears. I don't need this. And he was like, he died at 97. And God love my grandfather. It makes me think about it because it has to do with, I guess, giving up too. No matter what age you are, you probably feel a little bit like, I have to use something to help me hear. You know, am I losing some of my, my autonomy? But for you, it's positive, and it's improving your quality of life, which is the whole point of talking about
It's been incredible. I only wish I did it sooner now. I really do. They're very easy to use. You can't see. Most people don't know that I have them.
Yeah, I wouldn't know. So when you said your family brought it to your attention, did someone bring you went to Ken's office in Auburn? Did somebody bring you in?
Yes, actually, my husband brought me in. My daughter was coming home from school. She'd walk in and she'd say, Mom, I can hear the TV out in the garage. Like I said, I couldn't hear when I was out in a restaurant. I couldn't hear anybody. Had to keep saying over and over again, can you repeat that? Even family gatherings were getting tough. And that was really the hardest, when you can't hear the grandchildren because they're speaking softly and everybody seemed to be talking too fast, too soft and too fast. And then I would get frustrated and I'd leave the conversation because I felt like I couldn't keep up. So that's when I knew I needed to do something.
So sometimes it kind of alienated you in a little
Yes,
way.
absolutely, it does. Because you don't want to keep asking what, and you don't want people to think, what's up with her? Having them, I hear everything now. The TV's at a normal level now.
You mean
in
no
my
one asked you to
house.
turn it down?
Nobody asks me to turn it down. And I absolutely love it. And like I said, I just wished I did it earlier.
Now, did you talk to your primary care about it? Or did you knew that the office was there, the Ken's Beltone office was there, so you went in?
Right. I knew that the office was there, and I knew there was no charge for a hearing test. And I said, at least I'll go and get the base test, like Ken was just talking about, to find out where my hearing was at, which I would highly recommend anyway, just to know. And once I did that and, I got my diagnosis, then I just decided to just go right with it. I didn't want it to get any worse, and I didn't want to miss out anymore on life.
That's such a good point. And I hope anybody listening, Jane is from Brookfield, and Ken Karrasch, who's a hearing instrument specialist certified with Beltone. His office is in Auburn, but he started out in Quincy, and he's been all over the place. I think that this is a really important thing to talk about. I've had done so many shows with just critical diseases, and it depends on when you're diagnosed with those too, but some of them are fatal. You can do something about this. I mean, there are children that obviously are born deaf or born hard of hearing or develop ear infections. When I had my daughter, everybody was, watch out for the ear infections, and my friends' kids were getting the ear tubes, and oh my gosh, is this going to lead to hearing problems? Almost we wanted to overdiagnose, make sure there was absolutely nothing. Every time she got an ear infection, I would panic that it could ruin her eardrum or do something to that effect. So the fact that you're saying that even in your 50s, you listened to people and you went in. Now, when they tell you, though, how did they tell you, and what was your first reaction when they said, you know what, you really could benefit from some hearing aids?
Well, I kind of had an idea that I was, maybe needed something. I didn't think I was going to need hearing aids yet, though, because, like I said, it becomes the new norm as you go along every year, even if you're just losing a little at a time. I really didn't think I was going to need the hearing aids. But the other thing that bothered me was I didn't want hearing aids because I just associated hearing aids with getting older. So I really didn't want to get them. But again, they showed me how I could hear in the office, and I knew I had to get hearing aids.
Now, let's talk about expense, Ken. I read nationally that devices can range anywhere per pair for $7,000 to $8,000 on the high end. And what would the average be, maybe?
Average,
Not just for your company, but
again, probably 5.
5,000?
Yeah, around
All right,
there.
so it's not cheap.
No.
And I read that Medicare, and in many states, their Medicaid doesn't cover hearing aids. So what happens here in Massachusetts? Our Medicaid is Mass Health for the
Yes.
most part. Do they cover, from
Yes.
your experience?
Actually, they have excellent coverage. They're getting very good state-of-the-art hearing aids. Unlike some of the states I've worked in, the coverage here is incredible.
And you've worked in Rhode Island
I've worked in Rhode Island, Connecticut,
and Connecticut
yes, Florida.
and Florida. Well, Florida actually, well, yeah, I mean, if you're talking about seniors losing their hearing, not necessarily a bad place. But you're saying in Massachusetts that we're lucky for our Mass Health.
It's the best I've seen.
Wow. Okay. So it's not like you have to get, if you're on Mass Health, Medicare, Mass Health, you have to worry that much about it because do private insurers, I would assume, do they cover?
Some, not many. A lot of times, if you worked for a company that had noise-related problems, they might cover
Like
you
a
better.
construction company?
A construction, or in my case, when I started the Quincy Shipyard in Quincy,
Oh,
Mass,
yeah.
they were covered.
Now, you said you had a carpenter come in recently and that you deal with the union. Sometimes their benefits cover it.
They are very good. They are covered to a certain extent, and plus they go through another company, an intermediary company that actually brings it down even lower.
Oh, wow. So that's a good thing because that would surprise me. They're expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, I guess it shouldn't surprise me. Eyeglasses, I just got a new pair and very expensive. But I also think of so many people that develop hearing loss, and I looked at all sorts of research and charts, and it's actually could be, I mean, they talk about 20 to 69, but the average age is like late 60s, early 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound right to you? Yeah. So that's like when people start to retire. Right. So they lose if they were working all their life, they lose that benefit. So they're on Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. So if they're in Massachusetts, I guess it's not as bad a situation as I was thinking. But there must be state agencies that people can go to, too. I know you can go to Mass Health, to the Mass Health Connector online during their enrollment period and look at that. Are there other ways that if people need help, other organizations they can go to?
There's always there's local organizations. We accept, I'm proud to say, most anything that covers hearing aids we will accept.
And that's Beltone.
And that's Beltone, yes, which you don't see all the time.
And you know a lot because you worked with your father's own hearing aid company.
And because we are a larger entity, we are allowed to accept these. When I was in my small business, I couldn't afford to take a lot of these. I couldn't wait for the money.
Now, have you seen that price, I would imagine, grow exponentially, but the technology has grown exponentially?
The technology, if I was to imagine what I'm doing today, 37 years ago, it was Star Wars.
The next generation.
I pull my lightsaber out and help people every day. The technology I'm using is nothing short of amazing. It's bringing people back into the fold again. It's letting people enjoy a quality of life. There's one thing to getting older. A quality of life issue is important.
Now, what about, I mean, I'm assuming you don't see too many children because they go through,
No,
Medical.
I didn't. I don't.
yeah. But they do have, I mean, again, when I think of hearing aids, that's why when I looked at Jane's so closely, I can't believe it because the hearing aids I saw maybe 10 years ago were a much bigger piece that goes inside the ear and then the clip went around the outside.
Right.
But this is a tiny little wire. And then the clip is like, goes over like an eyeglass. Like your eyeglasses cover your ears. That's how small it is.
Well, also, we're actually able to help people with hearing loss that I was not able to help a good part of my career. It's a high-frequency hearing loss. We are just missing the high frequencies. So for years, like you described, we'd take a hearing aid, jam it in their ear, plug them up like they had their thumb in their ear or a cork in their ear, and then tried to fix the loss. We didn't. It's only in the last 15, 20 years that we're actually able to help most of the people with what is the most prevalent loss, which is a high-frequency hearing loss.
So high frequency? Is it, so what would be an example of something that people, when you talk about high frequency, how high are we talking about?
When we're talking probably what's hurting them is 3,000 to 8,000 hertz.
Which would be like what kind of noise?
Treble, high frequency like you would think of. So as opposed to bass, low frequency, you're looking at more treble.
So if you're watching a TV show or somebody singing higher level?
Instruments, music, you're going to miss some of that. The biggest part of a high frequency loss is that you're missing pieces of speech.
But you can hear some of it.
You can hear some of it,
That
but
must be frustrating.
I equate everything to eye loss. Picture you're reading something, and it's okay, I'm just missing some of the letters. That's not okay. But that's what hearing loss is. You're missing pieces of the words.
How do we make, I mean, eyeglasses came into style. I remember my daughter just got them, not prescription, but she has blue light issues with computers, so the kids say. But I think a lot of people want to wear glasses because they're stylish. How do we get hearing aids to be stylish?
They are stylish at this point. Right now, you walk around, everybody has some sort of ear device hanging out of their ear.
Yeah, you could just say they're the wireless earbuds.
We're walking around. I walk around in a haze most of the time when I'm walking around because I'm listening to music, which I'm hurting my own hearing.
Well,
I
you
should
can
know
listen
better.
to music. It's just the volume, right?
No one listens to
Do
it
you
at a volume that they should be.
Really? So anytime I put an earbud in my ear, it's always going to be too loud?
Pretty much, especially for music.
All right, so Jane, because we were talking about, I read about this in 2014. So you got you got this when it was new, pretty much. So only 5 years ago, they now have through Bluetooth, you can audio stream through your phone, through an iPhone and iPad, to adjust the volume of your hearing aids.
Oh, I can do more than that now with the app that they have. I think that is what makes it a little more stylish now, because when people see what I can do with my phone app for my hearing aids, I can mute like outside noise, surrounding noise, so that I can speak one-on-one with somebody and hear more clearly. I can program my hearing aids for certain restaurants, and then when I go back, just hit the button, and it's already programmed for that restaurant how I had it programmed last time. I can lower the volume, make the volume higher. There's just so much you can do now, and I love it. When I get a phone call, it comes through my hearing aids. I don't have to listen. A lot of people used to have
Through
problems.
your cell phone when you get a phone call?
Yes, when I get a call through my cell phone, the sound comes through my hearing aids now. And that makes a huge difference right there, because a lot of times I was having trouble on the phone with hearing. So now that it comes through, I'm all set.
Do you ever say to somebody, what? Because you want to ignore them? I don't have my hearing aid on now. Sorry. Use it to your benefit. I know some people that may use it to their benefit. That's just to get a laugh, because it really isn't funny. I think what your story is critical to anyone listening, whether it's a child, whether it's usually somebody listening might be their parent who's in their 70s and 80s who just is in denial, or basically in denial and saying, both of my parents have issues with one ear, and it drives me crazy. Because they'll say, my mother, when I call, she says, hold on, got to turn the TV down. Hold on, can't hear you. Hold on. Oh, speak to this ear, Vicki. She'll turn her head. Wait, tell me in this ear. No. Let's do something about it. No, I'm only in my late 70s. I don't need hearing aids. But we're going to wrap up here. But is it true, Ken, that hearing aids and hearing at a higher volume, when you wear them, can stimulate your brain And in a good way?
Yes.
Because I read about people with dementia, but when you wear an ear device, which I never thought about, it's connected to your brain. Therefore, that the noise stimulates, or whatever the frequency, the decibel, stimulates your brain somehow and can help with dementia. Is that true?
Yes, and also
That's
you have to-
amazing.
you have to think of your brain as a computer. If you have a bad programmer, you're not going to get good results.
Good point.
The hearing aid, without a hearing aid, you're getting bad results. I can't type. You wouldn't want to get a message from me. That's what the hearing aids are doing. They're correcting the message.
Okay. So, Jane, if you had one piece of advice, I have a feeling I know you probably have more than one, which is fine. For someone who knows they have the TV on up loud, or they keep asking someone to repeat themselves, or their loved one's concerned about them, what would you tell them?
I would say go get a hearing test right away. It's not scary, not at all. It's very
not
simple.
painful.
Not painful at all. You'll find out if you don't have a hearing loss, you're going to find out what your baseline is. So then in a couple of years, then you see if anything's changed. But it can change your life dramatically, and it enhances everything. I highly encourage people to go out there and get their hearing tested.
And I think your story is important because it took you a while, like you said, for people that didn't hear the beginning of the show, to really listen to the people around you and say, all right, I'm going to do something about it. I'm only in my 50s, but I'm going to do something about it. And so you just walked into it's a free hearing test at the Beltone offices. I'm not sure. There's plenty of offices around from other companies. I don't know what they do, but it's a free test. So, again, what I hear you saying is don't be afraid of it. So if somebody's
Don't be afraid of
listening, you convince. And Ken, can you tell me, maybe, I don't know what seems to work best when you're talking with people in denial about it, because I'm sure you've seen a million. They come in and say, oh yeah, my daughter wants me to take this test, but I'll take it, but I'm sure I'm fine. I mean, what do you tell people when they get nervous about it?
First, let's test you. Let's see if there's a loss. What are we discussing until we know? And once there is, we show them, we prove to them, we demonstrate the actual product in their ear in the office.
Oh.
So they're listening to something that they will be listening to if they purchase hearing aids. So they have a good idea of what's happening.
So they realize what they've been missing out on,
Yes.
which is what Jane said, that
Yes.
it's really missing out. So May is Better Hearing and Speech Awareness Month. So take a minute, everybody listening, to listen. Sounds funny, but it's not. Listen when you're outside. Don't take it for granted. I know that when I did my research for the show, I realized I take a lot for granted. Consider things like loud noise at work, your kids wearing their earbuds turned up too high. Just think about it, because it matters. So thank you very much to my guest, Ken Karras, a hearing instrument specialist for Beltone in Auburn. Thank you for coming in today. I greatly
Thank you.
appreciate it. And Jane, who's from Brookfield, who came in and I would say is courageous, but is just wonderful and very tells her story very well. So thank you, Jane. I think you're going to help a lot of people.
Yes, please call in and make that appointment. It's a comprehensive test, and it takes about an hour and a half. So if you call in for that appointment, you'll never regret it.
And that's anywhere. Even calling a doctor. Just do something about it.
Right.
Because you don't know what you're missing.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you so much to both of you. That's Community Conversations. I'm Vicki Green. Have a wonderful day. Wonderful day. Wonderful day. Wonderful day.